and our traditional Minnehaha United Church of Christ, which is mainly a white mainline Protestant church. And we are merging. We live it together. We've been living together for over a year now. My education has been immense in the last year. In all of my white male privileged ways, many of which I took for granted, some of which I had insight to, have been challenged. And different ways of thinking about oppression in our lives have been challenged. But what I see is that the way forward is not because of me. The way forward is being in this community. And I think that if I were a young college student today, I would say, what is the community which I want to be part of? And what is the community in which my mark can be added together with the marks of others and where we can make a difference? So, thank you very much. You've been very patient. That just went on and on and on. You can stay as long as you want if you have questions. Tim offered to take me out for supper, so I'm here until Tim gets ready.
Yes, we do have time for questions, so that we'll open it up.
Please.
I have a question about the child abuse research that you did when they found that it was effective to give financial incentives to families who are being investigated. When the results of that were found, was there any sort of call to have to justify the ethics of giving financial incentives to families experiencing abuse to the state in order to fund it?
Actually, no. That did not become an issue. Many of the families were poor. And these were not cash incentives given directly to the families. The only cash incentive that occurred in the study was for being part of the research, that we paid individuals to be part of the research. So the incentives that they got were essentially opportunities to work with an agency that they picked themselves, not an imposed county social worker, but an agency that they picked themselves, a community agency, and then to identify what would be the best path for their family, and they have some resources to support that. So, no, I don't think that really was an issue. And it is active in all 87 counties in Minnesota. Other questions or thoughts? Or, an hour is a long time for a lecture. I've got lots of other stories, so you better ask some questions or I'll start.
When you're thinking about being an applied sociologist with your skill set versus some of the folks that you're in grad school with that are teaching on a college campus, what about that college campus do you wish you could bring in to your job, and what about your job that allows you to do so many different things which you never trade for, in terms of if those of our students who are thinking about graduate school and what they would want to do when they're done, what can you give us insight into those two things?
One of the things that you enjoy as an applied social scientist working in an applied research shop like Wilder is that you get to be quite eclectic with the things that you get involved with. And but the downside of that is that it's hard to get real depth in subject areas. And so the depth in subject areas that I've developed are studies that we've carried on over significant periods of time. So I still work in areas of child abuse, still work in homelessness. But if I look at my colleagues at university, and I have a bunch of colleagues at university, they tend to get focused and drill down in a study area, and their whole career is absorbed in that study area. And they're able to really make significant contributions to basic science in those areas. It's hard to make contributions to basic science as an applied researcher. And so you better find your bliss in the work that you can do in helping programs to strengthen their efforts to deliver services, or in helping to identify needs in the community that are not being met, or in helping craft new strategies for working with individuals, or giving low-income people access to a voice in the creation of the Central Corridor, something that I know Nancy's working on. The Central Corridor, for example, it's a $1 billion project about to lay out in St. Paul. And there are 4 different evaluation groups on this project. We had to create a commune for all the evaluators. We like it that we're in a commune because several of us come from that generation. There's Ford Foundation is studying it in one way. HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Federal Office, is studying it in another way. A group of foundations is studying it through the Living Cities Initiative. And there's a funders collaborative called the Central Corridor Funders Collaborative that's also studying and creating benchmarks. Well, this is one of those communities. We've kind of created a community. That's something that I think I would really miss if I had to leave the opportunity to be engaged in these kind of really living, active projects. But I can tell you really exactly the things that I miss from the university life. I miss sabbaticals. I miss having study time off. There's not much study time off in the applied social science life. I miss that deeper drill down and the opportunity to have real depth in the subject matter. I'm a consultant. I'm on a project at the university. It's an R01, which means it's an experimental study, federally funded experimental study. And they're looking at a treatment and control condition around smoking. And they're focusing on homeless smokers. And I had a few questions at the beginning. Why are we worrying about their smoking? They don't even have a place to live. But what I learned there was there are people that are part of that consulting and advising group. Their level of depth on subject matters was unbelievable. There's one there called, his name is Don Desjardins. And Don Desjardins has a list of publications, like 300 peer-reviewed publications. And he is the leading expert on how to get interventions to persons with AIDS, how to get people with AIDS of all various stripes to accept various interventions. He's done studies all over the world. He travels all over the world. And anytime anyone has a question about that, Don Desjardins is the one you call. You don't get to be like that at Wilder. You don't get to be the national expert on a subject matter. In applied research shops, the other thing that you have to do is you have to make all your money. That is, my budget every year, you've heard in the introduction, there's 11 staff that work with me. That staff sucks up $1.2 million of salaries and benefits. And every year, we've got to define at least $1.4 million of projects so that we can pay our overhead and pay our staff. So, if you're a university faculty, and I won't put you on the spot, Tim, but I'm guessing you don't have to make your salary every day. Your job is you go to a class and you find lots of young minds and you try to bring them through a range of intellectual challenges and getting them to think about the world and think about social science and learn about the skills and the strategies necessary. The skills are the same. The skill set is the same. You need to have a background in research methods. You need to understand what different kinds of research designs can be applied. You need to have a grounding in statistical methods. You don't have to be the best statistician in the world to be an applied social scientist, but you do have to have a grounding in the comparative method and statistical methods. In my job, it really helps if you learn how to write questions, because a big part of our job is asking questions. There's a whole graduate class devoted to asking the right questions, or the art of asking questions. It's a really worthwhile thing to learn. But I think skill sets aren't really different. What I find that's really different is the way in which one benefits from, the way one experiences the call to do this kind of applied work, or to become a brilliant expert in a subject area. And I think it's different. And I turn around, ask the people in this room, what do you think you'd be called to do? I don't know if I answered that, and if there's more to the question, I'll be glad I probably just put
Actually, I'll build up the question. When I was going through graduate school, some of the people who became applied sociologists stopped at the master's degree to do work to see if they needed the PhD. Are you finding now that the PhD is what one needs to do evaluative research?
Well, I'll go down the roster of the people that work for me. Michelle Gerard, senior scientist, master's from Harvard. Jessica Meyerson, senior scientist, master's from Princeton. Ellen Shelton, senior scientist, master's from University of Michigan. Maggie Scribe, almost a senior scientist, master's in social work and public policy from the University of Minnesota. Those are the qualifications of the people that work directly with me. Now, okay, I'm the boss, so, and I do have a PhD, and there is an incremental benefit by having a PhD in terms of the level to which you can rise, I think, in many organizations. But what we're finding now is that we need to create pathways to the top for the best talent, not the best certifications. We need to create pathways to the top for the best talent, not the best pieces of paper. And frankly, your question is very timely because we've just now, for the first time, defined a pathway to those highest positions for people that have master's level training, but are clearly among the best at doing the work that they're doing. So, kind of dodged the question a little bit, but other thoughts or questions? Or please.
I have a question about the research that was done about vocation.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any follow-through research done, like asking, are people aware of their vocations or following it? Because like it was shown that there's like a lack of faith in humanity pretty much, and I feel like that lack of faith in humanity leads to like lack of religious and spiritual organizations being involved. So has there been, or is there going to be any follow-through research done, like showing if people actually follow through with their vocation and like take the high life or take like what they're actually passionate about?
Well, you probably know that the mantra of all social scientists is to end every report with more research is needed. Or as Mike Patton, who's one of the evaluation gurus from Minnesota, was at graduate school. He was just a young faculty member when I started graduate school at the University of Minnesota, but we've remained friends. He says the focus should be on what's the next question. What's the next question? And I find that that's really helpful to think about what's the next question. So now I'll answer your question. We did in this research do follow-ups with people both while they were in school and then after they had graduated. And we did find that those juniors, at the time that they had become graduates, were more likely to be able to identify their vocation and describe it to us than were individuals who had just graduated without that preparation. We proposed to Lily that we should now do a follow-up of all of those freshmen and all of those juniors and all of those graduates again to see whether or not the definition of vocation and their understanding of vocation was changed after a 3 to 5 year period. So we did propose that, and so far Lily hasn't taken the bait. It's a good question. Other thoughts, questions, concerns, heretical remarks? How many here hope to teach? How many here hope to apply their talents to a job in human services? Can I just hear those that are thinking of human services, what kinds of things you're thinking of? Just go ahead, sir.
I want to use sexual violence instead.
Sexual violence counseling. We did one study on sexual violence perpetrated on children. We published one book chapter on that. And we followed up the perpetrators at Lino Lakes who were going through the treatment program. And one of the things that was interesting about that, we only found 2 things that were really remarkable about the changes in those that we did follow-up with that were basically, we could not detect any perpetrating and we could not detect. One was that on the introversion-extroversion scale that they changed, that they became less introverted. They were less self-drawn and self-defined. And the other thing is that there was really some kind, they usually describe the change that came over them as a type of spiritual change. That they didn't describe it as sort of reaction to treatment, or they described it as a spiritual change within them. That's important work. Other people thinking in the human services, just, I still have more hands. You're just the last hand to go down. Who else? Good.
Child protection.
Child protection. Okay, well, we haven't run out of the need for that, and as this young fellow out here pointed out, we probably won't. Poverty and child abuse will be with us, but the ways in which we intervene. Your friend was poking you to come out. Case manager in what kind? At a prison.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first time I went into Stillwater Prison.
I'm actually touring there next Friday.
Are you really? Okay. Well, it turns out that one of my graduate student colleagues, unbeknownst to me, had become the warden at Stillwater Prison. So I went in. He knew that I was coming, but I didn't know he was there. And so I got in the front door, and you know, you have to empty out all your pockets, and you have to turn over all your stuff. And so I did that, and the woman held up my ID and said, "Mr. Orr, yeah, the warden's going to need to see you." Put the card down, ushered me into the office. I went into this little ante room, so there was nobody there. It made me wait there. And finally it came out. Perpetrated the joke. I was going there actually to do mock job interviews. We were doing interviews with people soon to be released to try to test their skills in responding to questions that a job interviewer might ask about their prison record and their skills. So good luck with that. Thanks. Other humans? Yes.
Me?
Yes.
I want to be a forensic psychologist.
Oh.
So with I don't know, for like special victims unit stuff.
You know, I think that's very exciting. I have to say, anytime I watch one of those programs, I wished I was one of those. And before all that, in undergraduate years, I didn't know what I wanted to be. How many here don't know what they want to be? It's okay. A couple people my age. But I didn't know what I wanted to be. I applied for 4 different programs. Electrical engineering and was one, and then the other one was criminal justice at Northeastern University in Massachusetts. I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know, you know, I just jumped into the river and I kept following whatever path seemed to be in front of me. But that was very appealing because it seemed like there were so many things, and the world is just broken out with the technology and the science behind the detection of crime. I think would be really cool. Good luck. Other?
HR.
Human resources. You know, there's a guy from Mali, Africa, who is following us around right now. He's an international fellow, and he's the head of human resources for Energy Mali. And he's a really interesting guy, and he's got an amazing appetite for learning about stuff outside of HR. But right now we actually have a bunch of HR distress, and we'd kind of like him to turn his talents to our HR problems, but he's not there for that. What drew you to HR?
Basically my dad and my uncle said this is good for you when I was
When you're aimless? Yeah.
So I thought about going into law and stuff, but then really got more.
I think HR takes good backbone, and it takes ability to resolve things. It takes a persistence about an appetite for being willing to resolve things when things are difficult. Good luck. I think that's a good call. Other thoughts? I can stop, but there's no need for me to go on forever. I really can't stop. But I understood that it was 5 to 6:30, and you probably were sentenced to this, so I'll persist as long as you do. But yes, please.
I have a question about your vocation study. Why do you think that so much of the understanding and follow-up of vocation, as well as like people who have turned their lives around in like the sexual violence, is based in faith and spirituality in light of sort of the decline around the world in affiliation and association with former religions.
You asked really hard questions. No, it's okay. That's what you should do. It's the job. You know, it's interesting. I went to attended church all my life. I grew up in a Baptist church, and I now belong to the United Church of Christ, or also called Unitarians Considering Christ. And one of the people that joined our church got up and said, I joined, and he has kind of a funny speech pattern. He was a former communist. His marriage was arranged by the Communist Party. He said, I joined this church because it has no grossly objectionable doctrine. And one of the things that I've seen in the people that I've come to be very close to in the Spirit of the Lakes and Minnehaha merger, one of the things that I've seen is this sort of deep investment in spirituality, but not a deep investment in dogma or creed. And it'll be interesting. I don't know where the world is going on that, but it does seem to me that there is a deep hunger for the sense of something that is deep in spirit, and but not necessarily formalized religion or creed. I think there's a sense among spiritual people of a new ilk that the creeds have outlived their purpose. That the purpose to which one is called can't be expressed in an individual creed. And so I don't have any clue about how to answer your question, but that's the best I can do. I think that's a really interesting question. So on that, I'll stop. Thank you.